actually our pre-webinar, pre-conference webinar. We've had one before this. This is the final one, just before our conference in 20 days, exactly. So this is the second of two pre-webinar conferences. And as you know, I'm sure you can see behind you, Synergy, AI and Humans, Powering Possibilities is our theme for the year. And so we're inviting David to talk up to us about, well, our survival guide. I'm sure when you saw the topic, you were thinking, well, what's this about, right? So I'm going to just share slides as a guide, not because we're talking to the side. So this is just a conversation, and I'm going to be asking you questions, and I'm hoping that you will provide us with the insights so that we can be well prepared and survive in 2026. We're really depending on you, right, David? So
Oh boy, no pressure.
no, there's plenty pressure here. I've told everyone, if you want to survive in 2026, like you better be here. So, David, we are depending on you. Like it's you or nothing. So, so great. I've done introductions of myself. And David, would you like to introduce yourself? Or.
Yeah, my name's David Rice. I'm the executive editor of a publication called People Managing People. Been around for a while, but recently we've been shifting our focus from, sort of standard HR, people operations challenges to really hyper focusing on, I think, the challenge that most people are experiencing these days, which is AI and its role in the workplace and what does it mean for all of our futures. And so, yeah, that's been our big focus over the last 6 months, and it will likely continue to be based on everything I'm hearing.
Yeah. Okay, good. Wonderful. So of course I sent you the agenda, you know what we're talking about, but I'm going to give you some time once we finish talking about the main thing is just talk to us about AI because everything we're doing with regards to, that we've been buzzing. I've never seen AI being we've seen it coming for the last, I would say, 10 years, more especially in the last 5, but this year has been on a different level. So,
Yeah.
anything we can do to ensure that that collaboration or that shift happens without us, feeling overwhelmed or what we can do, then it would be definitely appreciated. So let's get into the meat. We're going to talk about, you know, 2026, which is, it's like, how far is it? It's barely how many days? Maybe 50 days away. It's not even far at all.
Very
And
close now.
why, yeah, why it demands new HR strategies. And then I'm hoping that you can give us insights on two top talent shifts to embrace, and then two key tech trends that obviously are reshaping HR. And I'm sure everyone knows the one that we're definitely one of them where we're going to be speaking about. And then more importantly, actionable steps that HR leaders can take. We want people to come out of this session and feel like, you know what, I'm going to go back and I'm going to do something. There's something I can do differently that will change my 2026. Yeah. So good. And maybe just start from your perspective, first of all, is why do you think 2026 is a turning point, if at all? Like what's going to be different, in your opinion, on 2026 compared to now? What do you see?
Well, I think we are advancing, like this slide says, very rapidly, right? We are maybe 6 months from agentic AI being more like almost standard. Whereas, like, today we think of generative AI, ChatGPT, Claude, these things are everywhere. And they're, replacing a lot of tasks, or people are using them to complete tasks. Whereas agentic AI will essentially take control of the task and do it on its own without you needing to prompt it. And that's what we've created here is, a very sophisticated brain, and
Mhm.
it's different than any technology that we've ever implemented in human society, and in particular the workplace. And so there's huge expectations on it from leadership. within every company, right? They all believe that this is sort of a, a strategic pillar to whatever it is that you do, and it's got to have its place, and you've got to start figuring out how the expectation isn't that it's an emerging technology. It's here, you've got to use it. So HR as a function, I don't believe that it can be replaced, but there are CEOs that feel a lot of HR's stuff can be done with this technology over time as they continue to develop it and implement it, and they want people to train it. And so this is a kind of a pivotal moment because I don't think a lot of HR leaders want to have like a sort of existential or philosophical conversation about the role of
Of
human
course.
beings,
Yeah, sure.
but I think it's part of the job now. I really do. I think it's as the people who are focused on people in the workplace, you're the one to lead it. You understand what people are doing in the workplace that is unique. You understand how to frame up their skills and to help them build business value. And I think that that's going to continue to be a
Okay.
more, even more part of the job, essentially.
So I have a question. I mean, for those who don't understand the difference, you're using buzzwords already, like agentic AI, generative AI. Can we just like, go back a bit and, like help us with understanding the difference? Because we're all at different levels. Some
Yeah,
people,
yeah, sure.
yeah, yeah. So if you can just tell us what's the main difference, because a lot of us are using ChatGPT and other
Yeah.
tools already. But what's the tell us the difference. What's agentic versus generative AI?
So, generative AI, you sit down with something like ChatGPT, you put in a prompt and it
Yeah.
generates an answer. It's going to use a logic and information retrieval to put together an answer that makes sense for what you asked it. And that's great, right? But it doesn't do anything on its own. It just sits there until you interact with it in some way.
Okay.
With agentic AI, you can develop a workflow that happens without you being involved at all. You don't, there are triggers that it will set into that will cause it to go into action and look at a data set. It could be, it looks at a scenario. Like I'll give you an example. In my work, right, I create a lot of content. So we wanted to find, is there a way that we can sort of automate the process of creating a graphic?
Mm-hmm.
So we took a AI agent builder and we essentially fed it data and like opportunities to monitor things that we were publishing. It would then look at that content, suggest a path forward for a graphic that we could create or that it could create. And then it would say, I think this is the best option based on the content that's there. That was the capability of the LLM that was plugged directly into that. The workflow essentially is it causes the LLM to look at it. It essentially prompts it for you. Imagine that. Um, and then it gives you a result and it says, what would you like me to do next? And at that point, you can interact with it to say, I'd like you to pursue this option. And then it will create that for you. We're getting more sophisticated where people are building workflows that it will say, I think this is the best one. And it can
Mm-hmm.
build it and say, do you
Mm-hmm.
approve? And that's the whole that's essentially you still being in the loop is your
Mm-hmm.
approval of what it created, or you can give it feedback and have it change, but the whole process happens without you asking it to do
Being
anything.
involved. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh well, wonderful. So yeah, so that's like, I mean, obviously, if we think we have an assistant using ChatGPT, this is like the real deal. Like this is
Yeah.
like taking the whole end to end, right? It can work on its own. Because I think I've seen a couple of adverts, at least I've seen one on LinkedIn recently looking for agents. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, like there are vacancies for, is that what that's about as well? Like, look, like vacancies for AI agents. I've seen
um,
that.
I imagine they're probably looking for people who can build agents.
Well, they
um,
didn't actually state that. They were like, I mean, it was a vacancy, and yes, they probably will end up getting that person, but it was quite interesting the way the ad was put, it was basically as if they were, this role is for an AI agent. Obviously, they would have to talk to its developer.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Someone.
well, we are seeing like
Yeah,
there's a website called There's an AI for that, and you'd be surprised some of the things that are on there. And they're
yeah,
essentially some of them are AI agents that you can put into play and test
yeah.
out and see if it works for you. And it's
Interesting.
um I do think we'll see more of that. I've never seen a LinkedIn ad for an agent,
No,
but
I
I
saw. It
wouldn't
was
be
a couple of months
surprised.
ago. Yeah. They made a
Yeah.
big deal out of it because I remember someone just like, wow, the first AI agent vacancies have started coming out. And, there was this vacancy for an AI agent. So,
That's
yeah,
wild, but it will
it is.
happen. It will
It is.
happen.
It is. It is. So those are some of the things that, very interesting things that we're seeing now. So we're talking about 2026 now. So what's the key nugget we're going to take from, why HR must embrace this synergy between, you know, us humans and AI? Why do you think that is key to next year and obviously years after that?
Well, I mean, we've talked in HR for years about getting your seat at the table, right?
Yeah.
And when we look at the business, that is where it's going.
Mhm.
Whether, on a personal level, do you always think it's a good thing? Maybe not. But that's where the
Mhm.
business is bound to go in the next 3 years. I know I just got back from a conference put on by Gartner, and they're giving people about three
Yeah.
years to redesign their entire organization.
Mhm.
Um, and I kind of outline that in an article that I just published on our website. If you take a look, it's right there on the
Yeah.
homepage. But yeah, I just think at this point, there's really we're not going to put the cat back in the bag, right? Like we are where we are. And so it's, we can either be a driver of the strategy of what comes next, essentially a steward of the human
Mhm.
being's role within the workplace and figuring out how we ensure that we remain relevant and part of it. And I think it's going to be, the thing that determines not only HR success, but the health of the workforce over the next 3 years. Because we are going to see increased capabilities from this technology for some time, and eventually it could really replace a lot of us. But that doesn't mean that it should. And
Yeah.
another bold prediction that Gardner makes is that by 2032, about a third of the world's economies will have regulations in place that demand human quotas in workplaces. So, like, essentially, you'll have to have a certain amount of employees, or you'll be probably
Mhm.
taxed differently or something like that. I'm not, I haven't seen it yet, but it shows that there's already thinking in governments about how to regulate this. And so, how do we get the most out of that though? Like, if we
Yeah.
are still in the workplace, and research shows that AI is at its best when it's paired with a human who knows how to use it, right? That's when you can really extract the most value. And I think that's going to continue to be the case for the next several years. People using it in conjunction with the skills that they have, the
Yeah.
capabilities that they have, is where
Mhm.
we're going to get the most value
Mhm.
and most ROI on it, really. Because right now, what is the thing everybody's saying? Well, we've dumped a bunch of money into it. We're using it all the time, and there's been no ROI. Right?
Yeah.
That's
Mhm.
the big
Mhm.
concern a lot of people are having. And it doesn't mean that the technology is a flop. It means that in a lot of cases, businesses aren't helping their people figure out how to use it most effectively, figure out what else to do with their time now that they have all this time efficiency and savings. And that is going to be HR's role, is helping us,
Yeah.
helping steward people through that next era and bring the most value to the business and essentially protecting, a lot of the workforce from being
Mhm.
let go and ultimately dooming our economies. I mean, this has a big I don't like to play it up to be too grandiose, but it does have a big
Mhm.
social impact when we talk about
Sure.
mass layoffs and all these things,
Yeah.
right? There's a knock-on effect to that we will all feel.
Mhm.
And we can help. I think HR is the right people to help prevent some of
Yeah.
those. Uh,
Okay. So I'm thinking like, how does this, so are you pro, like obviously I've seen at least a couple of firms now talking about combining HR and IT or HR and AI as the
Mm.
departments? Are you pro that, or I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Because
I don't
obviously, it's
I I don't find it realistic
okay.
because I think here's the thing. Look at the two groups of people, right?
Yeah,
That typically inhabit IT roles and those who inhabit HR roles.
yeah.
Most people didn't get into HR because they wanted to be computer experts.
Mhm.
And most people didn't get into IT because they like dealing with people problems,
People,
right?
yeah.
So
Yes.
the skills don't translate
Hmm.
evenly to just merge the two. What you do have to do though is you have to get the two departments to work in sync
In
with each
sync,
other.
yeah. Okay.
And a lot of that comes down to your CHRO and your CIO. They need to be close, like
They need to
working
be
together,
close.
understanding each other's problems and how they can help each other through those problems.
Okay.
Um, and their teams should be able to work pretty seamlessly as well. But I don't see the two becoming one department.
Okay.
That's just me
Yeah.
though.
So you think, well, so it shouldn't be you don't think it's a good match as in terms of becoming one. It's not that type of relationship, right? It's
No,
just,
they still face inherently
yeah,
different problems. And
yeah.
while they can
Mhm.
help each other with it, it doesn't mean that one, by doing this, they will just
Yeah,
automatically work seamlessly. And also what's
yeah.
going to happen is when you merge the two, the natural tendency of the business is going to see that as an inflated budget piece, whereas like
Okay, true, true.
so then
Yeah,
it becomes, well, how do we do away with some of these people is what it's is the natural
yeah.
discussion of CFOs and CEO,
Mhm.
CEOs is going to be, well, do we need everybody? And the truth is like you probably do because the skills that this person in HR has, just because they're
Yeah,
working closely and working well with
yeah,
this other person, doesn't mean that they can do that person's job.
yeah.
And doesn't mean that the
I get
AI
that.
can do either one of their jobs, right?
Yes.
So
So they should remain close friends and allies. They shouldn't get married, basically.
yeah, yeah. It's got to be, purely platonic.
Okay, 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 okay. Right. So let's talk about talent shifts and then we'll talk about tech trends. So two in particular, and then if there's any more, of course, fine. Right. So tell us about this first tech talent shift. We're talking about talent shifts that HR must embrace, and tell us why this is particularly important there
Yeah.
from jobs to capability portfolios. Just tell us about this shift.
Okay. Yeah. We've been talking about skills-based hiring for some
Yes,
time,
we
but
spoke about.
I
Mhm.
think a lot of people haven't quite gotten it right. Is we don't know how to move beyond the traditional ways of hiring, which has always been based on things like experience,
Mhm.
relevance within a certain industry, maybe. And those aren't necessarily things that are going to matter as much. I think we're moving from sort of fixed job descriptions more to fluid, like I said, capability portfolios. Roles are going to get partially automated. A lot of roles within the next 2 years will be at least partially automated, but that doesn't mean, in my opinion, that the worker themselves becomes obsolete.
Mhm.
Their bundle of capabilities, so to speak, and understanding how that can shift to where human skills are essential is going to be really important. I think it says here, and I talked to a guy named Cole Napper, who's no, he works a lot on like skills taxonomies and things like that. He says all the time, 1 in 3 job skills are already obsolete in this area of Gen AI, and within another couple of years, another third probably
Yes.
will be as well. And
Mhm.
so, when we think about automation, like it's not an end-to-end solution most of the time. You need a human being in the loop. So it doesn't mean that the role itself just disappears, but it does
Mhm.
transform significantly,
I see.
right? And so when it transforms and maybe people do less of these tasks, what else can we get them to do? Right? We
Mm.
can't just they're not just going to fill their days with nothing.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
what else where can we redeploy people to do things that are, really heavily human influenced? What's their most value? And that sort of internal mobility, it's a lot cheaper than going out and hiring externally to
Mhm.
find people who can do these other things. Let's help
Mhm.
them map their capabilities, not just their job description and their role, but understand their skills that they have that will
Mhm.
take them to the next thing in the workplace, right? And I
Mm.
think right now, a lot of organizations don't have much idea of what their people can actually do
Yeah.
beyond the job description. Like you
Mhm.
hired someone 5 years ago for one role, but they learned probably how to do three other things since then. But they don't, it's not
Mhm.
necessarily in their job reporting. So maybe
Mhm.
they're two levels up. Maybe their manager knows about it, but two levels up, no one knows that. And
Mm.
so when automation hits a department, you're scrambling to figure out who to let go or where to redeploy people.
Yeah.
If you map capabilities correctly and well, then you can kind of know who to transition where. And I think that's going to be a huge part of what comes next is, talent
Mm.
acquisition isn't going to play as much of a role as it's going to be talent deployment. How are you getting these people to do different things and
Mm.
continue building their value for the business? And you don't have to create a massive skills taxonomy that you probably
Mhm.
can't maintain, right? There are vendors that do all that stuff. But you can start simple. Just have managers spend 30 minutes with each person, understanding what they're good at beyond their current role. What did they do in previous jobs? What did they do? What are they doing in their personal life that demonstrates a capability? What are they really curious about? I think one of the big offering, possibilities uh, on offer here through AI is to help people connect with purpose. We get
Mm.
bogged down in all of our jobs with a lot of tasks that aren't very fulfilling, quite frankly. And we have an opportunity here when a lot of that sort of like routine cognitive work gets outsourced. Can we help people find some other purpose within their work? And, a part of that is developing these portfolios of capability and, not thinking of people as fixed roles that you're going to hire and fire. So,
Yeah. And I see this I'm just thinking about the best, the organizations who are gaining from this, like, because usually when we think about, even when we hire, like, especially, when you're thinking about critical hires, you're thinking about people who have bandwidth, right?
mhm,
And it's like a capability portfolio. Like it's really a capability portfolio. It's not necessarily a job. It's
mhm,
a set of capabilities, right? And
yeah,
of course, jobs do have capabilities, but I can just imagine someone being like a bunch of capabilities, right? They're not necessarily their job, but they have a whole plethora of skills
yeah,
that they bring to the table. So I could, yeah, because we have been talking about skills based. In fact, we spoke about it in the last webinar, but I think I
mhm,
like this thing about your portfolio. It almost makes me
mhm,
feel like you're like everyone's an artist, like you're in control of your, like you're an artist or you're a creative or you're someone who has their own portfolio and your portfolio is your skill sets. And that's what makes you, would I say, valuable in the skills market, not the job markets, right? The
yeah.
skills markets. Yeah, that's the way I see it. Okay,
We've
good.
spent. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, skills market. I mean, the job market is done. Okay,
Yeah.
so how does that bring us to this second shift, which is what do we mean by episodic training from,
Well,
and how does that differ from to continuous learning?
well, when we think about what this shift demands of people, right?
Mhm.
We think about how do we get people to keep developing those capabilities? Because if every 2 to 3 years, those capabilities, some of them will become obsolete, some of them will be, consumed by AI, then what we've got to do is we've got to find new ways to skill people up faster to get them the next skill that we need. Because there will be new demands of human beings through all this, right? I think that World Economic Forum estimate of, it'll eliminate 11 million jobs, but it'll create 9 million new ones, right? Well, what are those? We don't know yet, but as we find out, and what are the skills that are involved in those, how do we get people into those roles, right? Some of them are going to have to come internally, and I think that the key here is to start now on moving away from the sort of traditional training model, which we can kind of predict like a lot of things that are going to happen, but oh wait, sorry. um, I think I'm phrasing this poorly. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
um, I think that, we've got to sort of build learning into the everyday training. Like the old model of you have a training budget, here's what you're going to spend your money on. Uh, here's what we're going to get everybody to do. That's sort of, I think that's dying. Uh,
Okay.
Learning's got to become continuous. It's going to be embedded in the infrastructure of your work. It's not a separate activity. You don't go to a training seminar now once a
Mm-hmm.
month, and or when you change roles, it's not about that anymore. I think
Mm-hmm.
skills are depreciating faster than those traditional training cycles can sort of refresh. And AI tools, we can see it just if you're just casually using ChatGPT, you can see that it's evolving pretty
Mm-hmm.
quickly.
Oh,
And so
definitely. Faster than it was last year.
Exactly. And so, like, waiting for an annual training cycle to skill your people up, they're always going to be behind. So, we've got to,
Mm,
in order to create that adaptability in real time, we've just got to build it into the work. And so, you got to treat it like a learning infrastructure, like budget it like you'd budget technology
mhm.
and treat it as an essential operating expense. Like, it can't be the first thing that gets cut when budget gets tight, which is what's
I
always happened
see.
in the past, right?
Yes,
But
yes.
again, if things are changing every 2 to 3 years, when you cut learning, it means that your workforce capabilities start to depreciate. And so you've got to embed it in the work
Mm,
and make experimentation, tool adoption, skill development a part of their daily thought
mm,
process, not separate from it. Right. So I think traditionally we'd always kind of go, well, we're gonna, you take time out of work,
mhm,
you do it at nights, or we'll send you to a course and hopefully you retain something and apply it. That's not going to
mm,
work. Instead, we're going to have to build it into the flow of what they're doing. So, you know, 30 minutes a day to experiment with it on real work with with the support of their peers. And I think a big part of this is sort of the psychological safety to fail, because if you punish failure, people are going to move away from it. They're going to resist it. They don't want to, nobody wants to be punished, right? Because they didn't know what they were doing. How people learn is through doing, anyways. I think about, your phone when you first got it. Did you read the manual or did you just play with it, start figuring things out? That's
I
how
think it
people,
depends. I think it depends. It
yeah.
depends on if you're male or female. Maybe. Because I would read the
Maybe.
manual first, but my
Uh,
husband wouldn't.
yeah. I have yeah. Well, I know I would.
Exactly. That's
but,
what I'm saying. It
uh,
depends.
But I think you've got to have a protected space for
Mhm.
people just playing with it and figuring it out. It doesn't
Yeah,
necessarily have to be
software.
formalized courses,
Hmm.
because a lot of the time, like we see it in higher education, right? They're trying to make formalized courses, but they can't keep up with the speed of it. So by the time the course comes out, it's irrelevant.
It's it's
It's
obsolete.
outdated. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, we've got to create these conversations, right? Managers can facilitate this part. They could say like, hey, did you do your 30 minutes a day this week? What did you learn? What did you try? What didn't work? What do you want to try next week? Like, and
Mm.
and have that be a part of their job, because the truth is, you look at wages, the cost of living, all people can't afford to reskill on their own time most of the time. So
Yeah.
we've got to protect and pay for the learning if we want to get the skills out of it. That's just sort of how it's going to happen, or it's not really going to happen. And I think part of the reason that most reskilling programs fail is they ask workers to do it on nights or weekends on their own dime sometimes, like they're paying for it themselves. And
Mm.
so if you're asking somebody to learn AI tools, they got to learn new types of data analysis or new business process. That
Mm.
is work. And it should
Mm.
happen during work hours and count as part of their job. It's not an
Mm.
extracurricular that they're doing for fun, right?
Mm.
So, and
Mm. Interesting.
you think about work markets where workers are already stretched pretty thin. Maybe they're working multiple jobs to survive, or maybe they're dealing with infrastructure challenges like an unreliable internet connection, or their power goes out all the time, right? Asking them to
Mhm.
reskill on their own time it's like you're kind of asking them to choose between survival and adaptation. It's not quite fair. And I
Mhm.
think making learning time visible and protected, let them block their calendars for it, reduce some of their other metrics, and then celebrate their effort, not just the outcomes. Like the signal has to be that this is as important as delivering your quarterly targets, because the truth is, in the long term, it is, you know. But people, they've got to have that psychological safety to experiment, or it just won't take off. And so,
Mhm. So well, I mean, what I get from that is, and I think maybe it's particularly how learning happens when technology is involved. Like it's more practical. But when you were talking, I was just thinking about, doesn't it, I would think it depends on the type of what you're learning,
oh
right?
yeah, for sure.
For example, if there's like leadership skills type, um, well, how do you learn leadership skills? Obviously, I mean, you can learn on the job, but there's some of it that is better learned outside, outside of the jobs, not through an e-learning course, for example. Yeah.
Right.
I wouldn't recommend that as the best. But if you wanted to use like AI tools or technology, definitely. I mean, it's something you have to play around with. I remember when I got my first PC, like I literally just took it apart. Like I remember it always used to be open. Like, it had this casing. Mine was always off because I was fiddling with something, at different times. Either I'm taking out the modem or putting something back. The same thing with, when I first maybe started using like Microsoft Office, just go in and open all the applications and you're just like, trying things and playing around with it. So I think technology is typically learned like that. But when it comes to other skills, like maybe leadership and management skills, I think there's a play, the learning is quite different. Like, a cohort type training can be more suitable for that type of learning? Or what are your thoughts? Because that's what I'm thinking. Because I would think that learning online would not be as suitable because a lot of the learning comes from discussions with other people, like when it comes to leadership skills, like experiences, sharing experiences. There's a lot of learning that happens when you share experiences. But so that's my experience of I think the
Mm.
delivery, the best delivery method depends on what is actually being, what you're trying to learn. So different abilities or different competencies require different learning methods.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
agree. I think
Yeah.
peer learning is very strong, right? Like that
Yes,
experiential thing makes it
exactly.
more
Yeah.
memorable,
Hmm.
right? And when you learn with other people, it becomes even more like
Yes,
exponentially more
yes,
memorable.
yes.
You
Mhm.
remember what that person said to you when you figured that
Exactly.
out. You know what I mean? So I think that's going to be a huge part of it. And I think
Yeah.
a good way to just measure the effectiveness of that is start to measure velocity, right? So, how quickly did your team adapt the new tool? How fast are
Mm,
they becoming more productive with it? How rapidly are they like moving up the learning curve and really understanding like where they can plug it in differently? And this will also help you identify who's struggling a bit, right? So if someone's not
yes.
adopting it and they signal they need support, or it could be that they're sort of considering their other options. Either way, you kind of want to know early, right? So it helps you identify your champions, the people
Yeah.
who can adapt fast and pull others along. And
Mhm.
then those people can become your internal teachers, your change agents, sort of your bridge between the overall strategy and the frontline reality, right?
Mhm.
And so I think having
Yeah.
those settings for people to
Yeah.
try and fail, it socializes it and makes it
Yeah.
more real for people.
Mhm. I mean, I think if I just think about it practically, I know like quite a number of organizations I know have like knowledge sharing sessions um as part of their like routine, maybe like weekly or bi-weekly or something like that. And I believe that those sessions would be good opportunities for people to help other people learn, like, what are you learning and what tools are you using? Because sometimes when you just share the tools, It's like when I listen to other people, conversations with other people, and they tell me, in fact, a lot of the AI tools that I've started using is from hearing and listening to other people, what's making your life easier now? And, when I ask them and they tell me, and then, oh, I go and check out the tool. So, yes, a lot of it is on the job, especially when it comes to when I have any difficulty I have now, I go online and I'm like, there must be a tool for this. I'm sure. Like,
It's crazy. There's a tool for
I
everything now. So.
know. I was trying to format a document last week and I was like, I am sure there's an AI tool for this now. And,
Yeah.
but unfortunately it wasn't a great experience. I didn't research wide enough. The first tool I saw, I just purchased it, but it didn't really do what I wanted it to do. But the bottom line is that there are tools for literally everything now, and it's just finding the right tool. Maybe if I'd asked someone, which tool do you use? But yeah, that's interesting. So let's look at the tech trends, obviously the most obvious ones, and let's see what we can do. So we've already started talking about this.
Mhm.
Yes, yeah, I think this is the new speak. Everyone is hearing how we go leveraging AI and automation to enhance efficiency. So tell us what can we go away with from this discussion? What's changing? What AI tools are moving? Like before, it was like, oh, these are emerging tools. Now it's like this is expected. It's like minimum requirement. So
Yeah.
what's happening?
Well, it depends on your industry, but
Yeah.
I think it's good for everybody to learn something in vibe coding, right? Maybe it's a tool like Lovable, which is one that I use, for example, but there's a bunch of them. But I think for them to understand what it can do better and to really experiment to create a solution for them that might be useful in their role. AI literacy, it's not just coding or it's not, content creation. It's not
Mm-hmm.
even really just knowing I mean, part of it is knowing what these tools can and can't do, how to prompt them effectively, how to verify
Yes.
their output.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a big part of it is when to trust your judgment over what it suggests. And you can't
Mm.
get that from not using it. Like you're never
Yes.
going to understand what it does and how it does it and what to sort of look for. And I think everyone needs this. It's not just technical roles. Your
Mm-hmm.
HR team, your finance team, customer service, your executives,
Yes.
everybody's going to interact with these tools over the next 12 months, whether you train them or not. So
Yes.
it's not necessarily an inherent danger that people use AI. It's that
Mm-hmm.
the real danger is that they're going to use it poorly. Right. And maybe they trust the output when they shouldn't, or
Yes.
they end up
Mm.
if they fed it bad data, or in a lot of cases historical data, you
Yeah.
might perpetuate a bias.
Mm.
You may think that the AI is smarter than it really is, or you may
Mm-hmm.
dismiss it as useless because the first attempt failed. But when you dig into why it failed, it may have to do with the data or the
Mm-hmm.
prompting. So there's a lot of factors at play, and you really don't you're not going to understand it unless you're
Yeah.
using it regularly.
Yes.
And you've got
Mm.
to build practical, sort of hands on programs, not
Mm.
here. There's been too much. Here's how
Mm.
AI will work in theory. Like there's been a lot of promises made,
Yeah. Yeah.
but the actual practical everyday application of it is much
Mm-hmm.
different, right? And the work,
Okay.
how you use it to do the work that you do every day is much different. And I think it's important that we give people real problems with
Yeah.
these tools and say,
Mm-hmm.
this is real practice. See if
Mm.
you can solve this using this. And
Yes.
that's a great way to, like we said, put it into the process of their work.
Yeah.
And I
I
think
think. Mm-hmm.
I think part of that is to build augmentation explicitly into job descriptions,
Yes.
and let people know that like this is part of these tasks. It's not your job isn't do these tasks. It's accomplish these outcomes using these tools and
Yes.
capabilities. Some
Mm.
of it includes AI. S-
Mm.
You know.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about maybe very practically now. I always like to ask people about the tools they use. I know quite a number of people using Lovable. So please, what's your AI stack right now? Give me
Oh,
example of who's giving you
well,
joy right now.
Well,
What's giving
there's
you joy? Yeah.
there's so much, there's so many tools now. And
Well,
I
let's talk
part of
about
our
yours.
well, part of our culture is go out and
Mhm.
experiment.
Yes.
So we use a lot of different ones. I personally, uh, I don't use much Chat GPT, to be honest with you. I
Yes.
find it to be it's a people pleaser.
It,
It wants to keep me engaged with it at all costs, even if that means lying to me or telling me things that aren't reflective of
yeah.
reality, right?
Yeah.
Whereas I feel that Claude is a much better writer. Of course, I create
Mhm.
a lot of content. I do a lot of like
Mhm.
scripting for things, and I just think that it's a much better writer. I find that like if I do need code for something or suggestions for how to prompt another AI, Claude is very good at that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
I've found that I really enjoy using that tool quite a bit more.
Mhm.
I mentioned Lovable. It's a
Yeah.
no-code builder tool so that you can go in and build applications. You can build, surveys, all kinds of solutions that you might need in
Mhm.
your work. And you do it just by talking to it. You don't have to actually know any code, which is fascinating. I
Mhm.
built as just for we were doing an exercise on things you can build, and I built a layoff impact sort of analysis tool. So you would essentially fill out this form and it would do an analysis on the data that you input into it and
Mhm.
provide an estimate of what it thought, in terms of your NPS hit, your
Yeah.
morale scores,
Mhm.
your financial burdens, your
Mhm.
the how badly a big layoff would influence your internal processes,
Mhm.
all of that, right? Um, and I was really impressed with what it could do. I remember it was the first time I saw it, my jaw dropped. I was like, oh my God,
Mm.
this is incredible.
Yeah.
There's another, like, I think Perplexity is really good with like deep
Yes.
analysis or research tasks.
Mhm. Mhm.
So if you've got to find something, you're like, I need good sourcing for this. Um, that is I think, a great tool for that.
Yeah.
There's a tool that's come out, and it has very limited, you can only prompt it like a couple of times before you sort of run out of tokens, so to speak.
Credits. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's called Manus. And I've used it a few times to build like presentation decks, and I'm
Mhm.
actually quite impressed with what it can do. It
Yeah.
understands the prompts of like, hey, I want you to design this way. You only use these colors. Do this, do that. It
Yeah.
it does pretty well, I think, with a lot of that, and it's good at like building a data visualization, for example. So it's
Mhm.
it's one worth trying out. I think I just
Yeah.
thought it was a really interesting tool. I
Mhm.
haven't paid for it yet to see like what it can actually do because I'm sort
Yeah.
of like, how much am I going to spend on these
I
subscriptions?
know. I know. Like, tell me about that. Honestly, I was, in fact, yesterday I made a conscious effort to cancel one, the
Mhm.
formatting one. I just went, I almost forgot because usually the only time you remember is when you see the debit on your your
Yeah.
account. I was like, yeah, I have to cancel this subscription. And I went and I was like, canceled, right? Because I'm like, how many am I going to have running? But
Yeah.
yes, so it's definitely AI augmentation, and
Yeah.
I think this is our reality now. I mean, I could imagine years ago, this was not the kind of conversation we were having about tech. We were talking about automating, we
Mhm.
were talking about HRISs, we were just talking
Yeah.
about, moving
Maybe
from
a little
administrative. Yeah.
we might have been talking about machine learning or natural
Yeah,
language processing or
exactly.
something like that, but
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, with where we are now, I mean, it's just so much. And it is. You're right. It is a part of our reality, and I think it's
Mm,
kind of up to us. Like, is it a good part of our reality, or is it the thing that's gonna, there's a lot of doom and gloom out there. For all the
yeah.
utopianism and false promises, there's a lot of like panic and
Mm,
just assuming the worst. And I think that we don't have to do that. We can figure out like, how does this plug into what I do, and then where do I add
mm,
my value? And
mm,
the thing I always tell, like, I'm an editor, right? And I work with writers. And the thing I always tell writers is it doesn't know what's good. It knows the right words to put together to express an idea, but is that good? Is that
mm,
something that you want to read? Not
mhm,
necessarily. And there's a
mhm,
lot of ways that you might say that yourself, that are much more compelling or interesting or reflective of your personal experience. And that
Mm-hmm.
is just as valuable as having the exact right order of words to make a clear idea. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think it comes down to partially how we value ourselves and our own contributions, right? That's when we talk about, when I talk about it being sort of an existential, uncomfortable, philosophical conversation, this is what
Mm-hmm.
I mean. Like we have
Yeah.
to rethink what is good, what is
Yeah.
valuable,
Mm-hmm.
and is the human inherently part of what's valuable in anything that we do? And I
Yeah.
would argue that it probably is. So,
And it's interesting because obviously, I mean, it looks like now, like AI, I mean, it's all technology, but AI is on its own lane. Like, we have, before it was be tech savvy, but now it's be AI savvy, right?
yeah,
It's like this subset, it's very specific. So we're talking about AI fluency, not just
yeah,
tech on its
yeah.
own. It's like a
Well,
different field. Yeah.
yeah.
So,
Well, with tech, we had so much that we could do with it, right? And that
yes.
was cool. But
Mm-hmm.
there was always limitations. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this software does this, but I can't feed it all my data sets and ask it to
Yes,
analyze it.
yes.
I
Mm-hmm.
still have to do all that.
Mm-hmm.
With this, what makes it so unique and so challenging in some ways is you can feed it all your data sets and say, give me an analysis.
Mm-hmm.
You still have to go back and check and make sure that it looked at the right things and that the numbers that it pulled were accurate, and
Yeah,
that, is it really telling me what it needs,
yeah.
is it giving me the correct analysis? You still have to check
Mm-hmm.
all that. And that's why we are not going away. But at the end of the
Yes,
day, a lot of times you find, okay, maybe it got this or that wrong, but it was pretty close. And
yes, yes.
that's, but it's a huge
Yeah.
time saver in a lot of ways.
It is. And it can be a time waster when it makes
It can.
mistakes.
Well,
Well,
especially when people use it badly, right? I was talking
yeah,
earlier about like people using it wrong. I know people that have spent 30 minutes going back and forth with it about an email. I'm like, you could have just written the email.
ex
You know what I mean? It
yes,
would take you 10
yeah,
minutes. Like you didn't
yeah,
need to overthink it that
yes,
much. Your
yes,
boss
yes.
asked you a question and you got nervous about it. Part of your professional growth is figuring out how to answer that on your own
Mm-hmm.
and be insightful and keep it
Yes.
to only the things that he needs to know so that you don't waste their time, right? All
Mm.
of that is part of your professional development journey.
Yes.
Outsourcing it to ChatGPT is a waste of
Yeah.
time and effort.
It
It's not going to do the chat
is.
any good.
It is.
And
Yeah.
more often than not, your boss can tell that you put it into ChatGPT because of the way that it's phrased and sort of
Yes.
some of the gimmicks that it uses. You know what I mean?
Of course. Yes.
So it's better
Yeah.
to just do some things yourself.
I think you've just hit the nail on the head. Yes, some things should just be done by yourself, and because you still have to check it. I feel like it's best when, I mean, I think this is what has been said about it. It works best with human judgment. I remember someone put it nicely, AI should be at the middle. The human should be at the beginning and at the end, and AI
Correct.
should be in the middle. And
Uh,
you should never outsource the beginning and the end to AI. And I thought that was very insightful because a lot of issues always come up when people want to outsource the thinking,
yeah.
like
The
and then
judgment.
yes, the judgment, and then they don't look at the outputs because it makes mistakes. And it's not just about hallucinating, even in spreadsheets, like, even
Hmm.
just a couple of days ago, just some spreadsheet analysis. I had to ask two people, check it in Excel. And it was because I couldn't check in Excel, right? But I had to ask two people to check it in Excel, and it was, wrong. It was very close. It was just not one number short,
Yeah.
but it was very close. And if you are not an expert and you just take it hook, line, and sinker, then, that's your credibility gone. So you have to know when it was, like I said, it was very close. We're talking
Yeah.
just one number short, but one number could mean a lot
Yeah.
depending on what you're analyzing. And I had to ask two people, please run this on Excel, run this on Excel, because, I just needed to be sure. So, those are the realities, and those are some of the things that we're facing that is different. Okay. So the last shift, let's look at that one. It's still, of course, is in the same club, right?
Yeah.
Making it's always, this is what we also mentioned this last time, but how is this? The bit I'm very interested in is when you say ethically fraught, right? So yes,
Yeah.
predictive analytics is inevitable because in the world of AI, right, the great thing about AI is the speed in which it analyzes data. I mean, its records it does save you a lot of time, and its ability to analyze and see trends that you could never have even thoughts or correlations. I mean, statistics is so much easier now. But what is the ethical impact here?
Well, I think, we're in this place now, right, where uh, we see that we can predict anything if we want
Yeah,
to, right?
well,
If we monitor the right things, you can kind of start to predict like who's going to quit, who's burning out, who's
yeah.
underperforming, which roles are becoming obsolete. And it's actually can get, I've seen a few demos that I felt was a little unsettling. Um, and so it's not a question of whether or not the technology exists. It's more so, again, how are we going to use it? And this is an ethics and philosophical conversation. And so,
Mm,
you know, while we can enable proactive support, like at what point do you start to get towards invasive surveillance of people's lives? And that's
okay.
not
Mm,
cool. Now, it's great that we could identify a flight risk from the company 6 to 12 months early, right?
mhm.
And intervene maybe with development or new opportunities or a compensation adjustment. But you can pretty quickly create a sort of this dystopian monitoring system
Yeah.
that
Mhm,
really the
mhm,
big damage of it is that it destroys trust.
mm,
And so when the employee stops trusting you or starts thinking like they got to hide things from you, ultimately that's going to lead to bad things, right? Like,
okay.
so
Mm,
I think that's where the sort of ethical piece comes in, and a lot of
mhm,
organizations are buying these predictive analytics tools, and then they figure out governance, and I think that's backwards and dangerous. Before you
mm,
start implementing anything, you need to answer some questions like, what will we predict? What are we going to do with these predictions? What will we explicitly not do? Like, we just on a philosophical level, we do not want to do that. We don't believe that that's right. Who gets to
mm,
see this data, and how do we prevent misuse of that data? And
mm,
so, if the system if the system is designed in a certain way, you can do a lot of different things that are really cool and really informative. But I think the big one of the big pieces of it is you've got to be super transparent and let people get involved in the process, right?
mm,
So
mm,
I think we're seeing more willingness of people to collect data from them. Like, I think about the health monitoring devices that we have now.
mhm.
Yeah, Apple Watches. People are just letting this
Of course.
data about their pulse and their,
Yeah.
now they've
Sleep
got,
and
yeah, and what they ate, and all of this is being collected somewhere. But they know how it's used is the big
mhm,
thing. And so they feel more trust in it. If you give people, what your workers, a little bit of visibility into their own data, that transparency will build trust and
mhm,
help you maintain the relationship and keep people open to the possibilities, right? So, when you're collecting stuff, whether it's engagement scores or communication patterns, some kind of
mhm,
performance signal, they should be
mhm,
able to see it, not just HR. And
mm,
I know that's a little uncomfortable because it means they might disagree with the data, or they question the
mm,
algorithm that you're
mm,
using. They want to use it against you. But I think in some ways, that's good. That really
mm.
makes you challenge your assumptions, and it makes you challenge
Yeah.
what it's giving you out, like what the output is. And that just means that we have to build systems that are explainable and defensible and fair. That's
Mm,
ultimately good. So I think transparency is one of the big keys behind all this, so that everybody
mm,
understands what we're trying to do. Um,
yeah. Mm,
and
okay.
eventually there will be worries that workers are going to game the system if they know what's being
Of
measured.
course. Yeah.
But I would argue that gaming metrics is probably less toxic than hidden
Mm,
surveillance and sort of breeding paranoia in your people.
mm. it's interesting how you put it. I love the fact that you talk about, using data to build trust, but if it's purely for control, then, it does the opposite. It's like it's counterproductive, or yeah,
Yeah.
well, it's counter what the trust building. It actually causes distrust. And I can see that in how organizations work. I mean, I'm just thinking like tomorrow I'll be, you know, and when we talk about engagement scores, I'll be doing a presentation tomorrow around the engagement scores of a client that I worked with, and obviously sharing it with the entire organization for their input. So even that exercise alone is trust building, because we collected the data and now we've analyzed the data, we're sharing it with all employees, right?
Yeah.
But and how this could easily translate to the opposite is if we start looking at the data and trying to maybe dig deeper into it for the sake of um maybe something negative. Let me just put it that way.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
we wanted
No,
to,
if
like,
we're
yeah, like witch hunt certain
yeah.
people or something like that, then that would be a negative way of using that data. And sometimes you find, and this is my experience, sometimes when you work with leadership or management teams and you do these kind of analysis, they want to know, like, sometimes they want to know more about the data for other reasons outside of
Yeah.
trust
No.
building, right?
Yeah, it just goes back to sort of
Yeah.
what are we going to manage? Like, what are we going to predict? You've got to establish some clear boundaries about
Mhm.
what you're going to do with this, and you need hard limits and say, like, some things shouldn't be predicted, even if technically possible, right? So, an
Mhm.
example
Mhm.
would be like, we're going to predict attrition risk, but we're not going to look at individual health concerns. We might
Mhm.
try to identify burnout signals, but we're not going to look at people's political leanings and all the exterior factors that might be leading to them experiencing
Mhm.
a bit of disengagement. We'll
Mhm.
track, you know, learning velocity. How well are they picking this up and how quickly are they putting it into play? But we're not going to track your personal web browsing and try to pay attention to everything that you ever did to try to understand this thing. Because
Mhm.
that's just gets into this place of everybody works differently.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
some people they need to go lay it down in the middle of the day. You
Mm.
shouldn't flag that as a behavior. You know what I mean? So I think we need to be explicit about what
Yeah.
predictions and
How far we would go. Yes, like,
yeah,
yeah.
and what actions do they then trigger?
Yeah.
Because if
Yeah.
somebody's flagged for burnout, okay, what's the protocol? It should be a manager conversation within a certain period of time. No negative consequences for the signal itself. Some resources offered, you know, and just kind of leave it at that. Like, don't be too invasive. And if the person
Mm.
wants to come to you and ask for more help or whatever, that's fine. But that you can flag the behavior and just sort of check in with them and see what's going on
Mhm.
and then leave it at that. Establish consequences for like misuse, I think is another thing.
Mhm.
If a manager uses predictive data to sort of discriminate or punish somebody early or get into surveillance rather than support, then I think that that's something
Mhm.
that you've got to be prepared to enforce some rules around. Um,
Mm.
because
Mm.
these systems are only going to be as ethical as we make them as human beings.
Mm.
So,
Mm. Yeah. So I like that. So that's obviously something we have to think about when we're designing all these systems, or we're adopting AI and we're using predictive analytics. We should have it at the back of our heads, how far are we going? What is
mhm.
ethical? When is it too much? And, we need to bear that in mind. Otherwise, we cross boundaries and it could be counterproductive. Okay, so great. I think we'll just take questions. I think if we look at it, just to summarize some of the actions that leaders can take around, we've talked about skills, portfolios, maybe if organizations can audit their skills, the skill
Mhm.
sets, then they would be much more aware of the capabilities that exist in their workforce. And even for the individuals, they could understand what is in their own capability portfolio And then
Mhm.
I think we talked about learning, how we design learning as a core infrastructure, learning on the job, like continuous learning as opposed to episodic. I remember that word, episodic. Yeah, and just what we've talked about, building AI literacy, like AI fluency, as opposed to, well, tech, it's now more specific. It's like AI literacy. And I think even for HR professionals, if we're going to be using those tools, then we need to use them more, we need to use them in a more well, in an expert fashion. Like, and what do I mean by that? We need to know how to use them. We need to know how to prompt. I've seen
Mhm.
quite a bit of prompt engineering courses, and I think that's something that all of us need to, because sometimes the problems you even have using basic things like Claude and ChatGPT is because you are not skilled in prompting, right? And I find that people who have analytical or problem solving or come from a tech background probably do better prompts than the average person because they have been trained to prompt.
So
That's how
something
you would,
interesting,
yeah,
something
yeah,
something interesting on that is I
yeah,
recently
yeah.
did a podcast with a gentleman who he did a study on this,
Mhm.
and actually, tech people write worse prompts.
Really? So that's
Yeah,
just an assumption. Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
because
Why?
actually, what it
Like,
needs is not necessarily all the technical information. You can kind of bog it down or
yes.
cloud it with too
Mhm.
much information at times in your
Okay.
prompts.
Yeah.
And actually, what they found was is people in creative roles often wrote the
Ah,
most
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and management
Yeah.
roles
Mm.
because the truth is you're
Oh,
managing
yeah,
this
I get
AI.
that. Yes.
And so if you know how to communicate clearly and
Yes, yes.
specifically, you can get a better
Mm.
result. And
Yeah.
so actually managers are some of the best prompters.
Ah, yeah. I mean, I could definitely see how that could be. Yes, definitely. And true that you say some, I must say, I mean, tech people, quite a lot of them have issues communicating.
Yeah,
So,
and it's part of a sort of a broader personality type, but yes,
yes,
it often tends to
yes.
check out as true.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, but
yeah.
I think that it's interesting, right? Because they
Mm.
understand all the technical details of how it works, and you would think
But they don't
that,
know how to use it.
but they don't necessarily know how to communicate it. And it's like
Yes,
if you've ever
communicate.
sat with
Yes.
an engineer and they started telling you the details of what's going on in their
Mm.
work, and you're like, what are you even saying? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like it's sort of the same thing. And the AI, it may
Mm.
understand it. It's not that it
Yeah.
doesn't understand it, but it may need more just natural language. And we are moving into this time where like you see all the interfaces are becoming much more conversational.
Mm.
And
Mm.
that's really how it's starting to learn like human sentiment and understand what we want is through those conversations. So, you know, I think
And
prompt
it's funny.
engineering is an important skill,
Yeah.
but
Mm.
I do think it's just going to keep evolving.
Mm. Mm. Okay, and that's interesting because I remember obviously my early career in tech, right? I mean, I was a UI designer, and that role, we used to write the functional specs for the developers. So they didn't actually write like they didn't do the specifications. We did it, and then they used it to write the code. And I always wondered, like, I mean, obviously, couldn't they just start programming? But we had to write it out, like, and then they would use it to code, right? So
Hmm.
I think it was just improving the steps and the communication before they actually developed, programs. So it's quite interesting. Yeah. Okay, so let's just take questions. I see a lot of questions. I don't know whether to start from the top or the bottom, because I'm seeing a lot of questions. I think I'll start from the bottom because there's one here. Okay, there's a question on organizational, is it culture? Organizational culture is a comment will determine what AI is used for by HR. An ethical, transparent, and empathetic culture will implement with the right guardrails for the most part. Yeah, I think so. Yes, definitely culture will drive the ethical side, just like you said. I think I saw another comment. Someone said if AI has to be in the middle, it defeats the purpose of having because technology should be minimizing. The primary aim is to cut down human input to minimal level. I'm not sure. What do you think
Um,
about that? Is that the
I
primary
mean,
purpose
that's what,
of?
well, we could use it that way. The
Yeah.
question is, should we? And this again goes back to, I know that we all didn't get into this to become philosophers,
Yes,
right?
yes,
But
exactly.
I think if we look at the cognitive cost of outsourcing so much of our thinking, our functioning, if it's like, I'm of this of opinion that if it's a technical task that's, yes, it's cognitive, but it's time consuming and the AI can do it, uh, you know, the human should still be there to look after what does it actually look like? Um, what is the final output? And does it have the value that and does it fit our organizational context? All of
Mhm.
these questions I think should be answered by humans. I don't think that the goal should be to remove us from
Yeah.
everything as much as possible.
Mhm.
Now,
Mhm.
is that to say that some companies aren't going to do that? Of course they are. That is how some businesses will operate. I think, though, one of the issues those companies are going to run into is that everybody has access to this technology.
Mm.
And if you just use it for, like, let's say, for my business, I publish things, right? Now, if I just take what it gives me and I don't put any of myself into it and I don't analyze its output, I just pump it out there.
Yes.
Well, anybody can do that. And then what is my competitive differentiator at that point? If
Mm.
it's just me putting out the same things as everybody else who knows how to
Exactly.
prompt it in a certain
Mm-hmm.
way. The things
Mm.
that are going to make it value are the places and the types of interactions that human beings have with it.
Yes. Yeah.
That's going to be the thing that separates your ability to make value out of it. Again,
Yeah.
studies show humans using it, it's the collaboration between humans and AI,
Mhm.
our two brains together. That's where we really find
Yes.
the most value.
Yeah, and it's that human ingenuity, that human creativity, because just like you said, if the human element is, if there's no input from the human, then the output remains the same for everyone. Like it's just going to churn out what it has, because that's
Yeah.
what AI does.
And
It
this
does,
this idea of technical evolution, well,
yes,
is it supposed to learn from itself?
exactly. Yeah,
Or is it
because
supposed to learn from us? Like that we
it's,
created it so it could learn
yes,
from us and
yes,
with us,
yes,
right? But
yes,
it's not, I think that we are still a key part of its evolution. And so we
yes,
have to be involved in
yeah.
all these different things. So,
Yeah, because we're the trainer, right? We're the ones training it. We're the ones feeding it with data. Otherwise, how does it get better? That's why some of us can say, okay, you can see that just ChatGPT has really improved from last year,
mhm,
and
oh, yeah.
it
And it will
definitely
continue to
it will
improve.
continue to improve, right? And just like any other tool as well, the tools are better and better. I mean, I tested a tool I think 2 weeks ago, an AI recruiting tool, and I was like, wow, this is so much better than the ones I saw, a year ago. Like you upload the job description and it basically extracts the capabilities and then it comes up with the competency-based questions and then it posts the job and then it shares a link where the person can come and do the interview and it records them. I was like, wow, this is this is fantastic. And like it's come a long way because they were not always, we didn't really have tools that could do all that flow. And it just sends you the video. Like it asks you how long should the interview be, and you tell it and it sets the questions and it sends you the link of the video of the interview. In fact, it ranks all the people who took the interviews and tells you. So I was like,
Yeah.
wow, if that could, all the first level interviews that we would typically do, that could be done. But of course, then you have issues of bias, right?
Yeah.
How did it pick the best? Well, anyway, we would it would pick them based on the answers, right? Because it picks the skills, it uses the skill sets to set questions, but I guess how would it know that this was the best answer? I guess it would check
Somebody has to
against
tell it.
somebody has to tell it exactly.
Because it
So
might be the best answer for one organization, but not yours.
exactly. Yeah,
And so,
exactly.
yeah, we have to constantly be the context
Yeah.
provider.
Mm. So let's see. Someone asked a question, what practical strategies can L&D practitioners use to help leaders foster and embrace psychological safety within their teams? This is
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing I'd say is you got to link that psychological safety to business outcomes, right? The leaders always respond to data and performance impact, right? That's what they want to hear about. So, connected to metrics that they care about. How fast are we innovating? Well, teams with high psychological safety generate more ideas faster. So you can cite studies from like Google's Project Aristotle, I think it was, right? Yeah, I think showing it was like a top predictor of high performing teams. And retention and engagement, right? Those are two things that I think a lot of leaders do care about. They want to know, are people staying? Are they developing here? Are they engaged in the work that they're doing? Well, you can link
mm,
safety and experimentation to reduce turnover and burnout. Costly issues leaders already track. And then I'd also kind of reframe it as, like I'd start to reframe failure as rapid learning. Like I wouldn't even use the word for failure. I'd say,
mm,
because executives are naturally going to want to resist that language. So I'd say, well, we're embracing agility more so than, failing. We're being strategic. Swap failure tolerance for controlled experimentation in your language, right? So highlight the fast feedback loops that you get rather than the trial and error that you see sometimes. Um, because positive experimentation, it can be a risk mitigation tool. What did we learn that we didn't know? We didn't know this before we did this experiment, but now look at what the possibility is. Oh,
mm,
I've seen experiments where at the end of it, the business realized that they might have a new direction, like a new avenue for business to open up that they never even considered before. But now all of a sudden it's like, well, can we make that into a product? Could that be a
mm,
new a feature on top of this other service that we provide? And that only came through because of the experimentation. And you've got to be able to have that. Otherwise, because I think that static business models will struggle in this next era. And you
mm,
just have to sort of create the space for people to have a hypothesis, an expected outcome, the actual outcome, and what do we learn? And that shows structure and accountability around experimentation. And when you do that, and that's really what they're looking for, a lot of times is what you'll find. It's not so much that leaders are afraid of failure, I don't think. I think they're afraid that it's going to be sort of amorphous and people are
mm.
going to not really have any structure to it or understand what the effect of it was. And it just kind of turns into a waste of time. And then
Yeah.
when you have something that was really valuable, make like a mini case study out of it. And
Mm,
in as part of that, demonstrate how psychological safety was part of it. And share those stories throughout the whole company. You want because to the previous commenter's point about culture and HR driving it, well, how you
mm,
get culture to embrace it is it's got to be part of your story. Right.
mm,
So in leadership meetings and internal newsletters, town halls, these are spaces to tell those stories and to help people see that like you can try these things. It's social proof, right? And leaders
mhm.
trust evidence from peers more than they do some L&D vendor's presentation, right? So
Yeah,
I
true.
think that's what you've got to provide them is more
Yeah,
is evidence that like this safe to try framework that we've built is yielding these results. And
yeah,
they'll start to buy in and
yeah.
they'll start to see the risk less and start to see the ROI more. And I think that's
Interesting. Yes.
you've got to make that path clear for them.
Yeah. So someone asked that management teams now engage in the use of AI. How do we maintain employee trust when AI begins influencing promotions, pay, or performance decisions? That's an interesting one.
Yeah, well, the funny thing about this one is you'll find that a lot of people, when surveyed, actually trust it more in some cases. They feel that
Mm,
now the big thing is that you've got to be transparent in how you're building bias mitigation into whatever tools you're using. And if the
mm-hmm.
employees trust that, then you won't have too much of a problem. And the other thing
Mm,
is that you've always got to keep the final decision with a human being. Uh,
mm-hmm.
I think that, AI can inform the decision really well, but ultimately people are going to trust it a lot more if they can see who made this decision and get an explanation from that person as to why. And in that explanation, you can build in everything that the AI and has given you to make that decision and talk about that. But at the end of the day, I don't think it should make the decision. There's some interesting new tools. I just saw one that can do like real-time pay adjustments, and I thought, I don't know if that's good or bad. I don't know how to feel about that one yet. I'd have
How
to
does
see
he
it in
do that?
action.
Like,
Yeah,
what
what is
data
it
does he
basing it
use?
off of? The idea is
Yeah.
that it's actually a pay equity tool, but
Ah,
what is
okay.
it basing all of this off of? Now,
Mm-hmm.
it could really actually be a very effective tool. I need to see like a demo or something and to talk with
Yes.
the people who developed it to understand it better. But I think for your people, yeah, it's always about transparency and telling them like we're doing this because, we're trying to mitigate for this problem that we've had. We believe this is a solution. We can show you why and just be honest about it. And it's you don't have to spend your whole day doing that, but just sort of break it down or have a, one meeting where you're going to explain it more in depth and people will buy in, I think, a lot easier than you probably imagine. I know
Mm.
there's a distrust of AI, but if you can show some tangible benefits to them, it makes it a little easier to trust.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Okay, I think we can wrap up. It's been a very insightful discussion. I don't see any more questions. I think we've treated most of the questions. And do you have what would somebody here is thinking, you know what? How do I wrap this up? What can I go back and do tomorrow? Yeah. So
Yeah.
someone just asked a question, which is similar to what I was going to say anyway.
Yeah.
So why does it feel like we are jumping at AI blindly?
Because we are.
Because we are.
For a
Okay.
lot of us, for a lot of orgs are. They're
Yeah.
sucked in by the
Mm,
promise of it. They've seen the hype. They've seen, a lot of leaders see the efficiency and productivity
yes.
metrics.
Mm,
What I would say to everybody in this room is this is your year to help them see that it can be more than that. We've been in the adoption and implementation phase. What we've really got to start thinking about is how does this transform work? And what does that mean for human beings? It means that deep down, like I said, all through this, I know it makes some of us uncomfortable, but there does have to be some consideration of the bigger questions around this technology and what it means for our future. And that goes for the executives too. It's not like their job can't be on. They already have a robot CEO in some company in Europe. I mean,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like,
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
it's literally all of us that are going to have to deal with some level of existential crisis around this thing. And it doesn't have to be that way because we shape what it does. We are the cultivators of what it means in the organizational context. So don't jump blindly at it. Think about like what's a real use case, something practical I can do with it tomorrow or
Mm,
next month. In the next 30 days, I can put it into place to do this really practical thing. And
mhm.
if you're looking for use cases, I would just tell you, and this is a shameless self-promotion to end on, but we put a lot of work into it, so I'm going to go ahead and do it.
Yeah, yeah,
But
that's fine.
we developed this, it's an AI transformation explorer. If you create a free account on our site, you can get access to it. It has 146 use cases specifically for HR. It's very easy and intuitive to navigate. It gives you a sense of like scoring. How hard is this? What do you need to have in place internally to do this? Is this more of a solution you should build versus buying, or vice versa? What would you need to implement this successfully? It kind of maps a lot of that out. Gives you like, some checklists that are useful,
Mm,
and in conjunction with AI, maybe, or like if you've got a tech team, they can help you bring some of this to life. But I think that yeah, there's a lot of things that we can do with it that are very practical and useful and will help free up some of your time to entertain these
yeah.
bigger questions, which is going to
What's
be
the URL? Like, is it
uh
people management
I yeah, I
or
can put it in the chat. One
yeah, please put it in
second.
the chat so David is going to share the URL. So this is about use cases for HR, and we could just play around with it. Yeah.
There you go.
So
Yeah.
give us that. Yeah.
Um, yeah, you'll have to use, so you got to create an account
Of
for
course.
our,
Yeah.
but it's
Sure.
free. We don't
Yeah.
charge you anything for creating this account.
Sure. Sure.
So I'll give you the create an account
URL.
page. Yeah. But again, like you'll just be signed up for our newsletter, which I write twice a week.
Yes.
And yeah,
And your
it's
newsletters are really good, right? I read them.
thank you. I
And it's
appreciate
very
that.
different. Like I don't read a lot of stuff, but I read them because it's always practical, something to do. So please sign up for David's newsletter. It's really good. Really good.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, so yes, thank you. You've put it, yes, peoplemanagingpeople.com/resources. So
Mhm.
feel free to click there, open an account, and
And yeah,
start.
you can
Yeah,
find the Transformation Explorer and start exploring
and
some of
start
these use
using it.
cases that we've
Yeah.
built.
What's your best use case? Give me like your top three use cases.
Oh, well, I'm in the United States, so this is biased to my point of view. But
Yeah, okay, fine.
one of my favorite use cases for it is, and I've actually worked with somebody. We're going to do a show and tell event, maybe early next year, where we actually outline how she did this. But our benefits structure is unnecessarily complicated. And when you go to, as an American employee of a business, when you go to select your health insurance, they give you all this documentation that's really ridiculous to read. It's super long. It's full of like legal language and
Mhm.
it's hard to understand. And all in the while you're trying to get through your workday, it's just a pain, right?
Mhm.
So what she did was she built in Claude a tool that takes all the benefits documentation and then it asks the person, the employee, and this information doesn't get collected, it just gets used for the analysis, but
Mhm.
essentially about their health profile. What medications do you take? Do you have any conditions that you're managing?
Mhm.
And then it takes the health document or the benefits documentation and does an analysis of what is the best health plan for that person to fix or to
Great.
select. And it
Wow.
makes the selection process a lot easier for the average person, which normally it's a real pain. I'm not gonna
Of course, I
lie.
can imagine like looking through all the options. Like the more options you have, the more overwhelmed you are. So that would be
Yeah.
great.
Well,
Yeah.
and it's a huge financial burden that you're going to take on. So it's like a big decision in your life. You want to make sure you get the right one, especially if you've got kids, if they've
Hmm.
got conditions that you've got to manage. It's a huge responsibility, like to make sure that you get the right one so that you can, hopefully save as much money as possible. But yeah,
But
it's one of those.
hopefully it makes the best decision and it doesn't make any mistakes because it's
Yeah,
funny
yeah.
how you can trust it, right? We trust
Yeah,
it.
well, it's interesting because she'll talk about it, I'm sure, when we do our session, but
Yeah.
when she broke down how she tested it and all the, different things
Yeah.
she had to do to make sure that the outputs were correct. It does show you that like there's still a lot of work to do with this technology, but
Mhm.
really interesting and cool and useful things can be achieved with it.
Mm.
So
And when something goes wrong, like when AI systems fail, I mean, I think someone asked that question. Who's responsible? Is it HR, IT, or the vendor? When it gives us incorrect or discriminatory outcomes, who's responsible?
well, if you're using a vendor, I would try to build that into the language of your contract. But otherwise, I mean, it's a combination of HR and IT, and we have to own it. And I think though that you're the right people to do it, and you wouldn't want it sitting with any other business function. I don't think so. You know, uh, there will be legal things that you'll have to work with on your with your legal team to make sure that you've covered your bases, but um, I think we're in an era now where experimentation is not only possible, but somewhat expected by employees, by shareholders if you're in a big company. And so don't be afraid. I think
Um,
start testing things out and seeing what it can do and where you can build genuine value.
mm. So I think at this point we'll have to call it an evening here. It's evening. It's almost 9 o'clock in the evening here. And I know it's what time is it for you?
3 p.m. I've got to go get my kid
Ah,
from
six
school.
hours, 6 hours in Atlanta. Okay. And I just want to say thank you very much. This was very insightful. And lots of people, please give him a thumbs up. Let's say thank you to, and of course, I mean, all the free resources, the insights, catching up with you after 6 months, I guess, since we last spoke,
Yeah.
even though we've been communicating on LinkedIn. And thank you so much. And we really, really appreciate, and we'll invite you. I'm sure if we invite you back again, when we figured some of this AI stuff out, I hope you will accept our invitation.
Oh, anytime, anytime. And for everybody who mentioned that the link isn't working, I'm
No,
gonna
it's
put
working.
my.
I just tested it. Yes.
Oh, okay, okay. I'll also,
Yeah.
I'll go ahead and put this in there as well. But I'm gonna
Okay.
put in my my LinkedIn profile. You can connect
Yes.
with me on there, and if you have any questions or
Sure.
things you want to follow up with, feel free
Thank
to
you.
feel free
Thank
to
you. Thank
connect.
you. Thank you,
All right.
David. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone. And whatever you do, remember December 3rd to 4th, the HR Bootcamp Conference, the 13th HR Bootcamp Conference. Thank you, David, for being part of our pre-conference webinar, and we're looking forward to seeing everyone. We're going to continue the conversations. We have deep dive sessions on AI. So some of these AI tools that you've talked about, we will be experimenting with, we'll continue the conversation and we'll be experimenting with them. And I look forward to coming to Atlanta.
It's a great town. You'll have a good
Yes,
time.
I know. Yeah, I know. Thank you very much, David, and take
Yeah.
care.
Thank
And
you.
bye, everyone, and have a good night. Have a good night,
Bye.
everybody. Take care. Bye.